Hello, friends. We will learn today the story The Prisoner of Zembla. It is written by O. Henry, a very famous American author. I have made some changes into the story. Some very old fashioned words I have changed. And I have also written in brackets the meaning of some of the words. So you don't have to, you know, uh, consider the things in the bracket. They are just explanations. And the story is just about 3 or 4 minutes. After that, we will learn some grammatical points, such as the words and the use of prepositions in this story. Just 3 or 4 minutes, a very interesting story. I would ask you to at least stay till the story is over. And after that, if you feel like it, you can continue with the grammar. So here we start. The prisoner of Jembla. So the king fell into furious rage, so that none dared to go near him for fear. And he gave out that since the princess Ostla had disobeyed him, there would be a great tourney, and to the knight who proves himself of the greatest valor, he would grip the hand of the princess. And he sent forth a messenger to proclaim that he would do this. And the messenger went about the country making his desire known. And when the day came, the king sat in the grand stand, and by his side sat the Princess Ostla, looking very pale and beautiful, but with mournful eyes, from which she could scarcely keep the tears. And the knights who came to the tourney gazed upon the princess in wonder at her beauty, and each swore to win so that he could marry her and board with the king. Suddenly, the heart of the princess gave a great bound, for she saw among the knights one of the poor students with whom she had been in love. The knights mounted and rode in a line past the grandstand, and the king stopped the poor student, who had the worst horse and the poorest saddle of any of the knights, and said, Sir Knight, please tell me of what that marvelous shaky and rusty looking armor of yours is made. O king, said the young knight, seeing that we are about to engage in a big scrap, I would call it scrap iron, wouldn't you? Odds bodkins, said the king. The youth has a pretty wit. About this time, the Princess Ustla, who began to feel better at the sight of her lover, slipped a piece of gum into her mouth and closed her teeth upon it, and even smiled a little and showed the beautiful pulse with which her mouth was set. Whereupon, as soon as the knights perceived this, 217 of them went over to the king's treasurer and settled for the horse feed and went home. It seems very hard, said the princess, that I cannot marry when I choose. But two of the knights were left, one of them being the princess' lover. Here is enough for a fight, anyhow, said the king. Come here, O knights, will you fight for the hand of this fair lady? We will, said the knights. The two knights fought for 2 hours, and at length the princess' lover prevailed, and stretched the other upon the ground. The victorious knight took his horse to the king, and bowed low in his saddle. On the Princess Ostla's cheeks was a rosy flush, in her eyes the light of excitement, wide with the soft glow of love. Her lips were parted, her lovely hair unbound, and she grasped the arms of her chair and leaned forward with heaving bosom and happy smile to hear the words of her lover. You have fought well, Sir Knight, said the king, and if there is any boon you crave, you have but to name it. Then, said the knight, I will ask you this. I have bought the patent rights in your kingdom for Snyder's celebrated wrench, and I want a letter from you endorsing it. You shall have it, said the king, but I must tell you there is not a monkey in my kingdom. With a yell of rage, the victorious knight threw himself on his horse and rode away at a furious gallop. The king was about to speak when horrible suspicion flashed upon him, and he fell dead upon the grand stand. My God, he cried, he has forgotten to take the princess with him. Actually, it was Monkey Wrench. So that is how the story ends. And I found it very funny. Why? If you see the last line, he has forgotten to take the princess with him. What does it show? It just shows that in this world, the things related to business, your earnings, I mean, most of the guys, they will keep these things above love and romance. Love and romance have their own place. As we see in this story, this fellow who has come for marrying the princess, so it's all about this, and he starts talking about his monkey wrench, plate and right. That is one thing. That was the point of the story. And O. Henry has, you know, ended this story like most of his stories with a big twist. The second thing is, you see this monkey wrench. It has nothing to do with monkeys. It's a device used by the plumbers for pipes and other things. And though this fellow he had got a patent on Snyder's monkey wrench, he had no idea. Like the king, also had no idea that monkey wrench is a device. It has nothing to do with monkeys. So when the king informs him that there is not a monkey in the kingdom, this fellow gets absolutely, angry, and then he gallops away. Very funny. And you must have also wondered, as I do, there is no prisoner and there is no mention of a place called Jembla. So the title of this story is unexplained, The Prisoner of Jembla. Okay. And one another thing that you must have noticed is that when the princess started chewing her gum, I mean, during those times, I mean, it seems an old story because the king and princess was chewing gum available. Okay, we forget about that. But when she started chewing her gum, 217 knights, when they perceived this, they went toward the king's treasurer and settled for their horse feed. I mean, they paid for their horse feed and they went home. They refused to contest. Why? Uh, I was wondering, and I tried to search for it in the net, but I didn't find it. What my guess is that the princess does not have a real tooth. Her tooth, maybe they were bad or something. They had been taken out, and false teeth are pearls. Her mouth was set with pearls. So when the knights saw this, they, I mean, absolutely disliked the idea, and then they went home. Okay, so that might be the idea. So this is the story, and I hope you enjoyed this. There are so many things to learn from this story. As a student of English language, I'll tell you that if you it just took you 3 or 4 minutes, and during this period, you might have noticed new words and use of prepositions, new phrasal verbs, and construction of sentences. You can learn all from it very naturally and something which will stick with you. Okay, so it's my advice to you: read the stories. Uh, that's much better than reading artificial sentences. Okay, so here we see what are the new words that we learned. First, his armor was shaky, very old, dilapidated, as the king commented, dilapidated. And the king proclaimed about the event that was announced. And the king said, "This youth has a pretty wit." Wit means ability to use words in an amusing and clever way. You notice how he said that since we are going to enter a big scrap, I would say that my armor is made of scrap iron. So scrap has got two meanings: a fight and then waste. And he used these two meanings very cleverly. Old Podikins says, "Oh my God," in the olden times. That is equivalent of "Oh my God." And the famous celebrated Snyder's monkey wrench, that is famous. Celebrated is famous. And to why is to compete. When the, as you notice there, in the princess eyes, here, in her eyes, the In her eyes, the light of excitement, white with the soft glow of love. So that is compete. Why is competing? And crave. The king asks him, just if you crave for anything, if you crave anything, you just have to name it. So crave means to want something greatly. For example, somebody may crave for ice cream, somebody may crave for, you know, uh, fame. Crave means something that you want very greatly, you desire greatly. Then there is furious at a furious gallop, and the king fell into a furious rage, very intense, horrible, horrible suspicion, something causing great shock or disgust when the king noticed that the fellow has bounded away without taking the prince. And bound is jump. The princess heart gave a bound, jump, when she saw her lover among the knights. As far as preposition is concerned, you might have noticed that in the opening sentence, the king fell into a furious rage. Fall into a furious rage. And the messenger went about the country, proclaiming the king's desire to go about the country. And the king and the princess sat in the grand stand. Sat in. You sit on a chair and you sat in an enclosure. So they sat in the grand stand. And the princess was sitting by his side. Sit by his side. And uh, the knights gazed upon the princess in wonder. Okay, in wonder, and gazed upon the princess. And the knights first they rode in a line, so ride in a line. And the fellow replied that since we are going to engage in a scrap, fight for the hand of a princess, fight for, and at length, finally. When you say at length, it means finally. And at a furious gallop means at a fast pace. So these were the prepositions. And I have written here 10 words, but there are many more, which we saw there in brackets. So with this simple story, you may be richer by, say, some 20 words and some 10 use of prepositions. And you also learn the various sentence constructions. And it's much better than learning, English mechanically with artificial sentences. So this I think is much better, and I hope you'll continue this because I intend to bring more stories from O. Henry and from Munshi Premchand, maybe Rabindranath Tagore also. So we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for your presence. Thank you.